Random Access Memory by Matthew Wardell. Honey Tree Evil Eye was a female bull terrier born in October of 1983 in the state of Pennsylvania. In 1987, at the age of 4, Honey Tree Evil Eye first appeared in a commercial for Bud Light aired during the 21st Super Bowl as famed super party animal Spuds MacKenzie. Honey Tree Evil Eye would continue under the moniker of Spuds MacKenzie until the character's retirement in 1987, though the bull terrier herself would continue to relish in minor fame until her death in 1993. She was 9 years old. What a dog. A bittersweet smile bloomed across Neil's face as he recalled the images of Spuds MacKenzie merchandise. "What are you thinking about?" a man across the booth seat asked. Neil then recalled the slice of rhubarb pie he'd been enjoying and the man he was enjoying it in the company of, Thomas. Thomas had short brown hair. Short brown hair. Thomas said, "It's not some cartoon crap or something, is it? Are you listening to me?" Neil shook his head and then nodded, but the gist of what Thomas with short brown hair had been talking about had gone in one of Neil's ears and out the other. "It's not crap," Neil said, and some pie crumbs fell out of his mouth. "Huh?" "My work. It's not crap. Pop culture is what truly reflects the public psyche. What could be more important than preserving that?" Thomas sneered. "Maybe culture with a little, depth? Substance? Not some useless garbage that exists purely through rose-tinted screens." Thomas was drinking black coffee. No cream, no sugar, black coffee. Neil was slightly craving a lager with a crisp taste and a fast finish. Something Spuds MacKenzie would drink. "Well, if not retro streams, surely you follow some live streams?" Neil asked. "I don't even own a NetViewer, actually," Thomas said past upturned nose. "I access all my knowledge via podcasts so I can do my exercises and whatnot." "Huh," Neil said, and he recalled how taut and desirable Thomas's body was. Thomas, with maybe six-pack abs under his wool sweater. Were they on a date? He thought maybe they were. Why else would they be here? Until Thomas asked, "How's the family then?" "My family," Neil said, and glanced down at his watch. It read, "Pie," and it gave a little buzz, and Neil recalled the rhubarb pie nearly entirely eaten on his plate, and how delicious it was. He finished it off with a swoop of his fork. Neil didn't have a body like Thomas's, but he enjoyed his pie. Thomas was drinking black coffee, and now tapping his finger on the table impatiently. When Neil glanced down at his watch again, it buzzed and it read, "Talk about family," and he suddenly recalled a stream of images of his wife and his daughter and their names, Monica and Amelia. "Well," Neil said, "Amelia, and she goes to high school. She has, freckles." "Ugh, you poor bastard," Thomas groaned. "Pardon?" "Are you accessing knowledge on your own family? I can practically see your brain loading. Can you at least pay for Amelia to access official knowledge sites with a pop culture archivist's salary?" "You pompous, stuck-up, snot-nosed." The line came to Neil's mind reflexively, though it took him a moment to work up where he'd pulled it from. "Do you even remember how much your salary is?" said Thomas, with short brown hair, black coffee, nice body. "A fish called Wanda!" Neil slapped the table between them. His fork rattled on the plate, which was empty save for pie crumbs. A pained expression crossed Thomas's face. "You're a chump, Neil," he said. "Full of fiction, a dead-end brain crammed with useless knowledge. People just use you as a cheap hard drive to extract things from. You and your tiny life are nothing. Less than nothing, actually, because of the resources you eat up like a pig. And your brain won't even register this conversation as something worth storing long-term." "And you, Thomas," Neil said, "and your delusions of grandeur are not even worth remembering." Neil's watch buzzed again, and it read, "Storm off. Go home." Thomas had already laid some money out on the table, enough to cover both their meals plus a hearty tip. He was smiling. "Talk to you soon? It does me good to de-stress like this." Neil felt a 1-2 punch of emotions coming from opposite ends of some unidentifiable spectrum. He looked at Thomas, the details of the relationship already fading, and he asked, "Do you talk to everyone like this?" "I went to high school with lots of idiots. I don't know about you," Thomas said. Neil smiled, said, "Thanks for the pie," and he left the diner. It was a nice place now that he saw it from the outside. He wondered how many times he'd been there before or would go again, but he committed none of it to memory. On the train, neighborhoods whizzed by faster than you could name them, but it was so dark out that it may as well have been a subway Neil was riding. His brain, meanwhile, whirred through episode synopses of various American sitcoms. Ross and Joey become nap buddies. Steve Urkel builds a time machine. The human brain was a wonderful tool, so vast and spacious and vacant. Neil was more than an archivist. He was an expert, a library of generation-defining music, film, television, advertisements. To be a beacon through which people could connect to their cultural past, and to be paid for it? He didn't need that memory space for himself. That would be a selfish waste. Memories are what photos, memos, and loved ones were for. Neil trusted the synergy between his brain and his watch to notify him when he was at his stop. At its signal, he got off and followed the crowd through the ticket gate. "Go left," his watch read. "Go straight. Right. Straight. Up. Room 302. Neil opened the door and entered, took off his shoes, and was greeted in a kitchen living space by a middle-aged woman with auburn hair fading to gray. It was Monica. "Hello, wife of mine," Neil smiled. Monica's momentary look of surprised horror turned to realization. "Darling, Neil! Where were you, darling?" He thought back through the history of his schedule, where bits and pieces had already been recycled from his short-term memory. Aha! Pie, Neil recalled, and it was a delicious rhubarb. "Sounds lovely," Monica smiled warmly, but clearly had nothing else she wanted to say. "Where's our daughter?" "Amelia. Amelia's home studying citation." "Oh," Neil shushed himself up. "In her room, I suppose?" He tiptoed down the hall. "Last door on the left," Monica called, "and your watches will let you know when dinner's ready." Man almighty, did Neil have it all. Lucky. Lucky to just be alive, here with everyone he loved. That's what he thought when he tapped his knuckle on the last door on the left and gently turned the door opener thing. The knob. When he opened the door, a teenager with auburn hair shrieked in alarm. "Yeah!" Neil immediately ducked back in the hall and began apologizing profusely, saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." But the girl only broke down in laughter. Dad, it's a joke. Come in, I'm sorry." "Dah, sweet pea." Neil wiped his forehead. "You got me all in a tizzy. Is my face red?" "I'm sorry, I couldn't help it." The teenager, Amelia, hugged Neil tightly. "How was your day, Dad?" "The usual. Work." All day until 5 o'clock his head had been whirring along, bouncing whatever knowledge he had that others were willing to pay to access. "Oh, I had delicious rhubarb pie." Neil entered the room full of posters of pictures of places he'd never been to, or had even seen for that matter. Mountains, sand mountains, dunes, ships afloat at sea. They covered nearly every inch of wall. In the middle of the room was a big bed, half untucked, with a blue comforter. Neil sat down on the bed. "But enough about me. How was your day, sweet pea?" "I just stayed in here, studying citation." "Learn anything interesting, I hope?" "Sure," Amelia said. "It's just that..." "Uh-huh." "Well, I don't think you'd get it. Mom doesn't either, and that's okay." "Your old man may not be cloud smart, but he is street smart," Neil winked, feeling like Uncle Jesse or maybe the Fonz. "Ayy. Try me." "Okay. Well, most people think it's only safe to access official knowledge, the stuff hidden behind a paywall, right?" "Boy howdy," Neil tapped his noggin. "And we're taught that unsecured free sites may be full of non-truths, stuff anybody could submit, right? Well, rather than run from this kind of knowledge, we can use it, even if just as a mental exercise. Train our brains to separate fact, like we do with fiction. Like your job." "Like your old man." Neil's nodding had continued, though slower. So if we use non-truths like we do a vaccination, we can enrich the knowledge we pull from official sites too. The tough thing is a lot of this comes down to intuition, a bit like street smarts. Amelia caught her dad glancing down at his watch, though its face was blank to her. To Neil, it read, "Listen to daughter." "That's great, Sweet Pea, yeah, you're so smart. And soon you'll get into a good college and you'll get a good job." "Like my old man?" Amelia grinned. Neil laughed. "No, not like your old man. Better." "Actually, I'm already enrolled in second year towards my humanities degree with a major in anthropology." Neil grimaced. He couldn't hide his embarrassment from Amelia. "Exactly," she smiled. "And it's going super well." Just then Neil got a buzz, and Amelia must have gotten one too, because she looked down at her own watch, its face a mysterious blank to Neil. "Dinner!" they said in unison, and laughed. "You already washed up, Sweet Pea?" Amelia nodded. "Well, go on ahead. Tell Mom I'll be there in a moment." "'Kay, Dad. Bathroom's directly across the hall." Upon closing the door behind him, Neil muttered, "Tell me where my own bathroom is," though it took him a moment to figure out the push and twist locking mechanism, which felt foreign to his fingers. When he looked in the mirror, it took him even longer to register the man who looked back as himself. He recognized the uncannily familiar features, like individual strokes of a brush, wrinkles around the mouth and eyes, apparently from laughing, the thinning, receding line of his hair, already mostly gray from some kind of stress he couldn't then recall. His brain eventually pulled back and saw the portrait as a whole, and labeled it as me, but it didn't feel like the me he was moment to moment. This me was colored by the recent recollection of forgetting the details of his daughter's life, frustration and embarrassment. Amelia, humanities, anthropology. Neil repeated the details like a monastic mantra in his head until the synapses fit them to memory. Long-term memory, if he could force it. And then he joined his family for dinner. Monica had prepared a kind of fluffy meatloaf with bits of corn and cauliflower in it. "Your favorite, dear?" She kissed him on the forehead, but there was a touch of irony in her voice. "I'll take your word for it," Neil beamed, and everyone at the table laughed. "That's right, get in front of it." As they ate, silent except for the clinking of cutlery, Neil's brain whirred for a topic of conversation that didn't include Alf or Chris Farley or Al Bundy, though his watch was buzzing away at him, urging him to glance down. Maybe Monica could tell he was thinking hard on something because she said, "Show us an episode of something, dear. Something light." "Oh," Amelia grinned. "Show us about Seinfeld. I always love those." "Yeah, put it on the net viewer," Monica said. The black hole in the wall opposite the table loomed hungrily. Streams of the gang waiting to be seated in a Chinese restaurant or wandering through a massive parking garage leaped from some recess of Neil's mind, but he pushed them back to wherever he'd pulled them from. "Maybe something a little more stimulating?" Amelia offered. "Yes, that. Amelia, why don't you tell us what you've been pulling from these days from your school sites?" Monica's face said she wasn't against the idea. "Well, I can't just put it on the net viewer for free," Amelia said. "Well, gee, if I didn't know that. It doesn't have to be a full-blown lecture," Neil encouraged. "I can't repeat it as well as my professors." "Hey, smarter than me." "Dear," Monica said to him. "What? If I'm paying for access to this knowledge, I want to hear a few tidbits, that's all." His wife and daughter exchanged a glance. "No pressure, Sweet Pea," Neil added gently. Amelia nodded. "Well, something I found interesting comes from these small villages near East Turkey to this day." "East Turkey," Neil smiled. "Macy's Day Parade." "And though we treat time like money, to spend or waste and so on, they are more worried about not wasting themselves away, and only doing what their body is comfortable with in a community effort." "No 9 to 5?" Monica raised her eyebrows at Neil. "We're moving to East Turkey, gang," Neil declared. Amelia gave a courtesy giggle, but she was invested in her story. "So, people just do what they can for the village, and go where they're needed, and stop before they waste themselves away. No clocks, no shifts, no money. Sounds nice, right?" That does sound nice, Monica nodded. Neil nodded agreement, but he was focusing on his brain to fight away intrusive thoughts, the snippets of television, and the web of factoids connecting everything. He was off the clock, and determined to spend this time with his family. Gang, he declared, I want to try to do this every night, if we can. This table, he patted the dinner table, perhaps too hard, for Monica jolted a bit. This table is for our time. His wife and daughter gave small applause at his decision. And maybe Neil had made the same declaration before and had forgotten about it. Maybe he hadn't. At least in that moment he could be the me who was present. All of their watches were buzzing, softly at first, frantically after some time. But that night, it was like there was an unspoken rule among them not to check. It was just Neil, his wife Monica, and their daughter Amelia at this table. Looking at Amelia's happy and slightly embarrassed face, Neil didn't recall the many ways she'd hurt or disappointed or delighted him or made him laugh. She was just Amelia as he knows her. She smiled at him. Neil and his clan stayed up later than usual that night, talking about almost anything that came to mind.